You know, I'm right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, entertainment, and so much more. Nick Durst, along with Joe Calabrese and Joe. This podcast is scheduled for one recording, and it's with the new Mr. Las Vegas. Move away, Penn and Teller, because our guest today, he is the Strip.
Now based in Las Vegas, Nevada, from Ontario, Canada. He is currently the ring announcer for Smackdown, the host of the Vegas Golden Knights at T-Mobile Arena, the host and creator of Monday's Dark, and the owner of the space and Marshawn Entertainment. We welcome to the show, Mark Nash.
Listen, thanks for having me on, guys. I love the hype. This is awesome.
Usually you're getting everybody else hyped, so we have to get you hyped.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me on. Honored to be with you guys.
Well, it's an honor to have you with us. You have your hand at a lot of different pots, a lot of different business things going on, so you have to stay plugged in. So I'm curious, when you wake up in the morning and you check your phone for the first time, what's that first app you're checking out?
It's my wife and I have 3 dogs, so the morning is always roll out of bed, grab a coffee. It's gorgeous in Las Vegas. I run outside in the backyard with the dogs, iced coffee, grab a few moments under the sun, and then it's opening the emails. It's scrolling through the emails, but I always check the calendar. I'm up by 7:30 usually, and I check the calendar to see what's on the docket, and away we go. It's compartmentalized. And I don't do anything alone, just like you guys. Great team, great people supporting me, wonderful partner in my wife, and beautiful place to live here in Vegas. I've been here now 14 years, and it's been a special ride, man. Really cool ride.
Well, certainly you're Mr. Las Vegas now, but you are, as Joe mentioned, Canadian. So now, of course, you're a Raiders fan, you're a Golden Knights fan, but what were some of your favorite teams growing up?
Grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, so that's about 5 hours north of Detroit, Michigan. My mother was from Windsor, Ontario. A little trivia, Windsor, Ontario is actually south of the United States. Detroit is north of Windsor. Little trivia. Big Detroit Red Wings fan, believe it or not, growing up. And that's just because of the proximity to Sault Ste. Marie, where I grew up. Toronto, which is, obviously most Canadians root for the Maple Leafs. I was a Red Wings fan, believe it or not, because we spent a lot of time in the old Joe Louis Arena as kids, Tiger Stadium, the old Pontiac Silverdome for the Lions. So all of my sports teams, my pro teams growing up were Detroit based, even the Pistons, man, the old bad boy days. So Detroit, it has a special place in my heart. A lot of friends and family live in the area. So big Detroit sports fan. I root for the Lions, believe it or not, even now. Big Lions guy, got to rock the Lions. But yeah, Detroit has a special place in my heart, and I love all their pro teams.
Well, that's great to hear. It's a surprise, so I'm sure our audience is definitely liking that. And give a shout out to Nick Lidstrom, one of the best defensemen of all time. The Red Wings, just incredible. What, like 25, 26 straight years in the playoffs, which is unbelievable. Now, we've had some Detroit-based people on with us that have worked in media and gone around to the arenas, and you're getting around to the arenas now, and obviously you're based in a great arena, T-Mobile Arena. So I'm curious, where do you think the best food is? Because we actually were told that from one of our past guests, Lauren Jabara, who has Detroit roots, that the best pizza is actually Little Caesars Arena, the pizza in Detroit. So talk to us about some of the best food you've experienced, and how is the pizza in Detroit and then nearby you in Ontario?
I think it's a hard pass for me to even put Little Caesars pizza on it. I'm a fan of Little Caesars, played against Little Caesars hockey teams as a kid growing up. Little Caesars had the travel teams that came out of the Detroit area, and I played those guys as a little kid. I remember growing up. Stadium-wise, food-wise, I'm going to have to say over the last couple of years, Chavez Ravine, Dodger Stadium has upped their food game in a way that has blown me away. And I'm a little privy to because I'm there a lot. I love being in LA. I love going to the baseball games there, and Shohei obviously is the big draw, but their food over the last couple of years has been wild. And I love when they do, believe it or not, I love when they do theme nights. My wife is Filipino, so they always do a Filipino themed baseball game, all the trivia, all the music. They even do a jersey. You buy a certain seat, you get the commemorative jersey, and they'll do Filipino food. I love Chavez Ravine, Dodger Stadium for food. But in terms of just pizza, oh man, there's a place here in Vegas called Manzu, an Italian restaurant that does pizza on the side, and it's a hidden gem to anybody who ever comes to Vegas. Manzu Pizza in Vegas is some of the best pizza I've ever had, and I mean that sincerely. I grew up in, a tiny little town in Northern Ontario, big Italian community. This guy Gio Manzu, Giovanni Moro, his restaurant's called Manzu, straight up off the boat from Italy. Amazing dude. His pizza's just the bomb. So
Something for us to check out, Joe. I mean, last time me
yeah.
and Joe were out there, we had Grimaldi's, which was
Oh yeah.
bizarre because that's where we are in New York. But usually my go-to pizza spot, because I can never get to Chicago, is when I'm in Vegas, I go to Giordano's on the Strip,
Yeah.
get that deep dish pizza.
What's wild about Vegas, and you guys know this, and I'm sure all of your listeners do too. We have, obviously it's a destination, right? It's
Yep.
Disneyland for adults. So the top chefs on the planet all have a presence here. Like you just said, even the Chicago pizzerias have a presence here. You're in Vegas. Do you want Chicago deep dish? I guess you do, So it's pretty remarkable what we have at our disposal. My wife and I say it every night. There's something to do here every night. You can literally sensory overload. You
Yep.
gotta find your sort of rhythm and your pace to live here in Vegas. The best example is we don't live in Times Square, right? New York City, you don't live in Times Square. We don't live on the Strip. I don't live at the Venetian. So it's a pretty remarkable city. We're creeping up on 3 million in population now, and we have the best of everything: best shows, best restaurants, best resorts, and now, obviously, over the last decade, some of the best sports to take over our
Oh,
city.
and I can't wait for the athletics in a few years. Another job for you coming in the
No,
future.
I got enough. I got enough.
Well, that's going to be a mess. But I mean, the strip traffic is okay to begin with now, but now once that stadium gets built and they put it right on the strip, that's going to be a huge disaster. But so
Listen, within one block, we have T-Mobile Arena, Allegiant Stadium, and now the Athletics Stadium, which is a architectural masterpiece. If you've seen the renderings, the thing is stunning.
yeah,
And to think that that's going to be on the corner of Tropicana and Las Vegas
Yeah.
Boulevard in a few years, it's just unreal how
I really
fast.
hope Tropicana gets the naming rights after they knock down the hotel for it.
I think they're going to do something to pay homage to the history of our great city. We have a wonderful museum here called the Neon Museum, which takes all the old marquees and signs from the casinos that have been imploded. And that's very specific to Vegas, right? We're constantly reinventing ourselves. They'll take a building down and build a new one, as opposed to restoring it and keeping that sort of vintage aesthetic. There's a pro and con to both of those, but when they take it down, they make sure they salvage a lot of the
Mhm.
iconic history that was with that property. And if you ever come to Vegas again, you got to see the Neon Museum. So I think what I've heard, little birds chirping, is the Neon Museum is going to have a presence in the new baseball
That'd
stadium.
be
So as
cool.
you're walking into it, you're actually walking through history of Las Vegas, which, in my opinion, walking into a ballpark and seeing iconic Vegas history, that's going to be pretty special ballpark to walk into.
Yeah, and it seems like it's going to be a while till it's open, but I'll tell you what, that first MLB All-Star game that's in Las Vegas is going to be next level.
Of course, everything's next level in Vegas. It's remarkable, the feedback and the comments that we get. After Super Bowl was here, F1 is now here. We've had NBA Summer League here for years. We've had
WrestleMania.
WrestleMania.
Well, WrestleMania was here, and it seems as though even though those events take place in other cities across the country, Vegas seems to outdo, and I'm just being biased because I live here, but listen, you can fit a small town in some of these resorts, right? So the infrastructure and the ability to pull off these large scale events, it's second nature to the planning committees here. Like, they're remarkable human beings, and what they take on and pull off is second to none.
Absolutely. So you mentioned it before, right? With the pizza and the New York connection. So you lived here for a really, really long time. And we're also going to get to your theater experience and your acting experience. But it seems like you had a lot of interest growing up, right? So when you were younger, right, and you were growing up, when you were in school, right? What did you want to do ultimately then? And what was your decision like when you were pursuing school and university?
Great question. It's a pretty straightforward answer. Any young kid at that time growing up in Canada, you're born with skates on. And, like anybody else, I wanted to play pro hockey. I played as long as I could. I was a third string goaltender in the Canadian Hockey League
Oh,
for a team called the Belleville Bulls. So I made it to the Ontario Hockey League-ish, as an 18, 19, 20-year-old.
I
And
was
then
gonna say with the major development leagues over there, the OHL, the WHL, right? The Quebec Junior Major Hockey League, right? Like, was there a path for you?
Well, like I said, I played as long as I could, right? So, I played for all the top teams in my hometown, the travel teams, and then I wasn't drafted into the Ontario Hockey League, so I walked on and played. I got lucky. But back then the game was a little different. I'm not a tall dude, and I was a goaltender. Most goaltenders now are 6'2" to 6'4", 200 pounds, and they just block the net. You don't have to move much anymore. Back then, I'm 5'7" and I'm sliding all over the ice trying to be Marty Brodeur or Mike Richter. These were the goalies that I idolized when I was, pursuing a career. And then it got to the point where I was like, hey, am I going into the ECHL or am I going over to Europe to play to just continue this dream? Or am I going to do something else? And ultimately, I made a decision to do something else. And I think it's just, transparently looking back on it, I didn't have the maturity that I needed as an 18, 19-year-old back then to understand the business of pro sports. And I was just a kid who wanted to play. And when you're riding the pines as a backup goalie, sometimes even third string being sent down to the minors as a kid, I was a kid, I was 18 years old. I'm like, "Nah, I'm better than this. I should be playing. You got that passion." But I didn't have the that I don't know, dedication or that drive or the maturity, let's just call it what it was, to weather that storm. And so, like you just said, I said, you know what? I said to my parents, I'm going to try a crazier career. I'm going to be an actor, and I went to New York City and basically threw myself into any class, any acting class that I could possibly get into. And I was just lucky. I think the fact that my hockey career didn't pan out gave me that extra drive and motivation that I was going to create a career for myself in entertainment. And you guys know entertainment's just as cutthroat as pro sports, but I got lucky, booked a couple big shows, was able to tour with the Lion King for a few years, singing Hakuna Matata, playing Timon, this iconic role. And then a Broadway show called Rock of Ages is what brought me to Vegas almost 14 years ago now. And at that time, my wife and I were like, hey, we're just going to do 6 months to a year, and then we'll go back to LA or New York and find the next gig. But I was sitting in my room one night with the 80s mullet wig on, staring at the TV. I had a really cool dressing room, looking at the TV, and Bill Foley goes on the news and says, I think I want to bring a pro hockey team to Las Vegas. And here's this goofy Broadway performer from Northern Ontario, Canada, sitting in a dressing room at the Venetian, going, "This guy's full of shit, but I'm going to call him tomorrow." And I kid you not, that's what I did. The
wow.
next morning, I woke up and I cold called Fidelity Financial and I said, "Hey, I saw Mr. Foley on the news. He wants to bring a pro hockey team to Vegas. I'm from Northern Ontario, Canada. My father is a dentist by trade, bought the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds from Phil and Tony Esposito in the 80s. So
Wow.
that junior franchise has been in our family ever since, and now it's a small piece. So hockey's in our DNA." Woman on the phone goes, "Hang on 1 second." Guy picks up the phone. His name's Todd Pollock. He's now our vice president. He was the day one employee. There was only one employee. And I said, "Hey, Todd, I'm an actor on the strip, but I know the game like the back of my hand. How can I help you?" And his response was, "Are you the funny guy in Rock of Ages? I bring all my dates to your show."
Oh,
He
Oh,
goes,
he knew who you are. That's
"Who I
awesome.
was." And
Okay.
I want to
I 10 years ago, we're in our eighth season now. 10 years ago, I joined what they were calling the Vegas Wants Hockey Committee. And my job was to call you and just basically say, "Hey guys, I need $1,000 for a season ticket deposit for a team that doesn't exist. Don't worry, it's refundable. And we just basically had a season ticket campaign to prove that we had a fan base. T-Mobile Arena was already being built. We sold 14,000 season tickets. T-Mobile gets built. They grant him a franchise. He writes a big check. The rest is history. And at that time, I thought, well, that's cool. I helped get a team here. I'm done. A couple months later, I get a phone call and they're like, hey, we want you to be our host in Arena, hype guy. And I was like, I'm an actor. I don't know how to host anything. That was 10 years ago. And here we are. That saying yes to that job and accepting the in arena host position with the Golden Knights essentially changed my life.
So it's interesting how your life changed. And I'll give a little credit to our one of our former guests here who was on twice with us, the guy who made Rock of Ages what it was, Constantine Maroulis, in the
Yeah.
original Broadway adaptation. He was great in that. He got a little screwed. He wasn't allowed to be in the movie. But from there, the show springs all over the place.
Yeah.
You got the gig there in Vegas, which you now call your home. So talk to us at the time, with your talk about your family and whatnot, the move to originally first when you're acting, move to United States, and then eventually move into the desert and staying put in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I give my parents a lot of credit, man. Personally, I'm the youngest of five. So my parents are now in their 80s. My oldest brother is 60. So my oldest brother is the same age as some of my buddies' parents, so he'll get mad at me for saying that. But I give my parents a lot of credit for allowing me to do that, right? Pretty tight-knit group, youngest of five, and the youngest decides, hey, I'm gonna leave Northern Ontario and move to Manhattan. And to have their blessing and support is unbelievable, right? A lot of people don't have that opportunity or they have to do it on their own. And I was lucky that I had four older siblings and two loving parents who supported that decision and said, you know what, go after it, chase it, go figure it out. And then, to this day, I could book a regional commercial for a local restaurant and they think I've won an Oscar, right? Like that's just family and that's parents loving their son. And there's nothing greater for me than knowing that you have two wonderful parents who just love the shit out of you and support you. And vice versa, right? Like I have an incredible family, and a lot of people say to me, "Oh, your parents must be so proud of you for what you're doing." And it's actually the reverse. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my parents for allowing me this opportunity. That doesn't happen very often in my book. I see a lot of, you know, families that don't have a nucleus like we do. My parents have been married almost 60 years, and that's just not heard of anymore, right? So it's pretty remarkable to have that as uh, your team. And I don't take it for granted. It's every day I wake up, I speak to my parents every day, speak to most of my siblings every day, and it's what keeps us all going, right? My brothers are all in different lanes doing their own thing, but we all talk all the time, and we're a pretty tight-knit family. And I don't think any of us in our family could do what we do without each other. So that's a little emotional insight, but it's something that I carry with me every day, and it's probably the thing that I'm the most proud of is the fact that I have this incredible family that has my back. And as I talk to other business leaders and colleagues in sports, we all say the same thing. Look, we're all so busy. We're all going a million miles an hour. And at the end of the day, all anybody wants to do is sit on a couch at home and be with their family and have a great dinner. So it's been pretty remarkable to have them on my side. And going back to answer your question, leaving home at 19, 20 years old to move to the United States, not only the United States, but to New York City in the early 90s when it probably wasn't what it is now. 42nd Street back then, you couldn't walk it, right? Like
Hmm.
Disney had just purchased the theater on the
Now
corner.
you can't drive it because of the bus lane.
Yeah, yeah. So you get it. Back then Hell's Kitchen was Hell's Kitchen, and that's where I lived. And they were like, where are you living? And I'm like, I'm living over here on 46th. It was a trip. But, I essentially grew up in Manhattan. I moved there 19, 20 years old, and I spent a decade there. So I essentially became a man in New York, and there's no better city to grow up in than New York City.
Ain't it the truth?
You make
You
the
know,
move,
somebody,
yeah, and then you go from one crazy place to the other. So you're out there in Vegas, make the transition. So, well, just the differences as far as like performing on stage, acting, doing Broadway in New York versus going to Vegas, being at a hotel? Any
Yeah,
differences there?
I think it goes to what I was saying before about, the Disneyland for adults, right? We get 50 million visitors here a year. And what I realized quickly, and this is something that's different from New York and Los Angeles for the entertainment community, is that you're in bed essentially with the hospitality community. So Broadway community in New York City is very much the Broadway community, and there's no sort of synergy with really anything else that's going on in Manhattan. You got Wall Street, you got Broadway, you got restaurants, you got all sorts of different things, but they're not tied. LA, the same thing. You got film and TV. Some people are involved in hospitality. Most actors that are chasing a dream are waiting tables.
Right.
Same thing in New York. But here, it's all about an experience, right? People are coming here for a couple of days to forget about the BS they have going on in their life. And what's pretty remarkable is that I may be standing on stage in a costume singing my face off, but I am no more important than the person dealing cards on the floor, the person cleaning your room, the cashier behind the registration desk. Our whole mission as entertainers or hospitality professionals on the strip is to make you forget about your life for 3 days and give you the best possible experience. And I think that's what I really latched onto was this sense of community and this sense of understanding that all of us had this job to do. And it was to make 50 million visitors have a great time. And when they go home, we have this wonderful place to live, tax-free state. Everything's new, it's clean. You live in Summerlin or Henderson or Southwest, and you have these incredible neighborhoods. So going back to what I said, you don't live in Times Square. In my neighborhood, we have churches and schools and
Mhm.
malls and restaurants. And like I said, there's almost 3 million people here. And when the strip is going and those experiences are remarkable, that trickle down effect into the community is what makes Las Vegas so special. We have these wonderful buildings, we have these wonderful sports teams, restaurants, and shows. But what makes those things so special are the people that drive them. And that's what makes Vegas so special. And sometimes we get a little bad rap from the rest of the country because it is Disneyland for adults. But you forget what makes it Disneyland for adults are some pretty remarkable human beings providing you those services. So that's what my wife and I fell in love with. It wasn't the resorts and the restaurants, it was the people. And that's why we're still here. Listen, I travel almost full time for work, going from city to city with a gig. I could live anywhere.
Yeah.
I love it here. I love it here, and it's because of the people.
Well, now you're a part of that ecosystem, which is amazing. Mark,
Yeah.
my question for you, right, is essentially you made a pivot, right, from wanting to play sports and all that, and you essentially became a big old theater kid, right? And you're going from New York and Vegas, and essentially you work in the entertainment business, right? But that voice of yours, right, it's a performing arts voice, right? It's a big booming voice. You can clearly get to octaves that not a lot of other dudes can get to. There's a little bit of a singing voice in there. So when did you realize, right, that you had this booming voice and this talented voice where you could be able to get up on stage, and do performing arts and, be like the drama kid and sing a little bit. And you eventually parlayed that into, hosting an arena gig for a major professional sports team. And now you're the announcer, for a major, pro wrestling, entertainment company entity that's been around for 50, 60 years now. So when did you realize that? Was that very young? Did you have like an inkling of it, or did something that
Uh,
you figured out later in life?
no, it's my parents, right? My parents were pretty outside the box thinkers, raising their 5 kids. It's an English speaking city, Sault Ste. Marie, but they sent us to French school. So my all of my elementary grade school was spent in a completely French
Wow.
immersion program. We weren't allowed to speak English at school.
Wow.
Could learn French as a second language because it's the second language of Canada.
Right.
While I'm in school, we had to take piano lessons. I took singing lessons,
Oh,
all while I was focused on playing hockey. So, and in Canada, you got to understand there are no seasons for hockey, right? Like we play through the summer, we train year round. And especially when you reach a certain level as a 13, 14-year-old, you know that you're playing for those travel teams and those rep teams from each city. You're playing year round. So there was no skiing in the winter, even though we had a wonderful ski resort in our hometown. It was hockey 24/7. But my parents made sure that we were sort of well versed in other areas. And for me, it was piano lessons and singing lessons. And to this day, I remember as a kid, I was a goaltender, so I was at the end of the ice, and because I played for the rep teams and the travel teams, we had good teams. So sometimes I wouldn't get any shots, and I'd be by myself at the end of the ice. So I'd be in my crease singing. Like my parents would tell me as a kid, they would hear me from the stands. I'd be keeping myself busy in that singing tunes. I was the rowdy, goofy goalie on the bus, parents telling me to shut up all the time. I always knew that I had this knack for entertaining, right? And I was a goalie, man. Maybe it's all the pucks to the head that most goalies who play we're quirky, right? And so I think there was a natural, easy transition into entertainment. And then the voice just found itself, the training, the years of class and understanding that it's a muscle and you just got to train it. And I think the first time I got on stage and was actually paid to sing, I was like, oh, I can do this, and then you do it 8 shows a week. So you're performing every night. And then just like anything else, your life revolves around those 2 hours on stage. So you got to warm up properly and you got to warm down properly. And your life revolves around your job. And your job is to make sure you have a voice. Because if you lose your voice or you get sick, you don't work. And so, learning the ropes of being able to perform 8 shows a week consistently for a decade, I think is what gave me a strong muscle. And then when the Golden Knights handed me a microphone for the first time, I was just like, hey, I'm just a fan with a mic and I know how to scream without losing my voice, I guess is the best way to put it.
So whether it's Golden Knights, Raiders, top ranked WWE, the voice is the key. If you get laryngitis, you're screwed or something. So I'm curious here, what's your, we'll call it pre-game routine? Because obviously you don't want to be drinking too much, then you can't go to the bathroom, and you're totally screwed. So talk to me about that game day routine for you to make sure your voice is right.
Yeah, I usually don't. So today, right? It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, and I've got game 5 of round 2 against the Oilers tonight. We got a home game. I try not to talk too much early in the day. So when I wake up, you guys feel it too. You wake up, you're like, oh, I sound like I just
Yeah.
woke. So I don't actually say anything. I don't take a phone call. My wife and I will have minimal conversation, which he sometimes enjoys because I talk too much. So I try not to speak at all on a show day up until maybe 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then there's just like, an athlete stretches their hamstrings if they're going to run a race. I have very specific vocal warm-ups that I do to bring my voice up to performance level. And what's always cool and weird is when I'm warming up vocally at a venue or around others that are not in that world. When you're in Broadway shows, everybody's doing it. So you're hearing all these weird sounds coming from every corner of the theater backstage. But right now, Friday night Smackdown, I'll be backstage at 4 o'clock in the afternoon doing all these warm-ups vocally, and some of the superstars and crew walk by me. What the hell is this guy doing? And they're just absurd sounds, like things you don't hear every day. But I definitely have a traditional vocal warm up as if I'm taking a Broadway stage. So even though I'm in sports now and it's a hockey game or a boxing ring or a wrestling ring, the warm up hasn't changed for me because I've been doing it so long that I know exactly where I am vocally. And if something's a little off, just like anybody else, you have cheats or workarounds so that you don't harm yourself, essentially, right? Because, like you guys just said, if I lose my voice, I don't work. And it happens. Listen, it happens, right? Allergies, cold, seasons change, you get sick. Um, but I just try to avoid as much of those opportunities as possible. And I will say, not working in a casino every night has certainly helped that because, obviously we have a lot of transient folks coming through these casinos and there's germs everywhere and poker chips and dice. And, so when I was doing the show on the strip, I could say that I would consistently get sick twice a year. And it usually happened when the season changed because people are coming in and out and there's colds and flus and allergies. And I would get sick twice a day. And knock on wood, I haven't seen that in a bit. And that's just because I've, now progressed onto 18,000 seat venues and I pop in and out and I try to avoid the crowd as much as possible.
So let's talk about that 18,000 seat venue that you call home, T-Mobile Arena. You mentioned it before, you're a little surprised they asked you to do that job. Obviously, you've grown into it very well over the years. So for you, what's your favorite part about being that in-arena host? And give us a celebrity or athlete that you got to meet through working for the Golden Knights that maybe got you a little starstruck when you were going to do a segment with them.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that's right, man. Our siren, it's a moment, right? First of all, I gotta say, Johnny Greco was the first vice president of entertainment for the Vegas Golden Knights in season one, and he gave me my start in sports. And so, the fact that he granted me this opportunity is something I'll never forget, and somebody that I'll carry with me forever. He, believe it or not, worked for the WWE for years and went to the Cleveland Cavaliers and came over to the Golden Knights, then left the Golden Knights, went to work for MSG and took care of the Knicks and the Rangers. Then he started the Kraken franchise. And this guy, when it comes to game presentation in sports, is probably the GOAT on the planet. Hands down, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, to ever do it, to understand the environment of pro sports. It's just something that I didn't know anything about, right? I came from an acting background. I understood film, television, Broadway. You sometimes forget as a sports fan when you go to games that entertainment component is so crucial
Hmm.
to home ice advantage, home court advantage, home field advantage. And this guy's the GOAT. He's just the GOAT. He gave me my start. Um, again, not discrediting the public image or perception of Las Vegas, but sometimes Vegas gets a bad rap. Oh, you don't have a true fan base. Pro sports in Vegas will never work. First of all, we have almost 300,000 full-time Canadian residents in Las Vegas. So that alone is like London, Ontario, population. That's our fan base, right? And then once we started and people understood hockey and got to learn the sport here, because let's be honest, not everybody understood the rules of hockey when it first came here, but they did real quick. And not to bring it down a little bit, but our first season started 8 or 9 days after the largest mass shooting in the history of the United States. So on October 1st, tragedy devastated our city. A week later, we're celebrating the birth and launch of the city's first pro sports team. So we had this entire celebration planned. Then the shooting happened and we had to pivot on the spot. And again, Johnny Greco understanding the environment that these fans are now walking into. I don't think there's a moment in my life that will have the impact that it's had on me than that puck drop, that game. To have guys like Derek Englund out on the ice speaking to 18,000 fans saying, "We are forever Vegas strong," and then having all of our first responders take the ice with our players, and then having families of the victims take the ice. The Golden Knights will always be the franchise of Vegas because A, it truly is a Vegas born team. We're not a relocated franchise. And we essentially helped heal a city in its darkest moment. And then to have that season go the way it did for us to make the Stanley Cup final in our first year is something that I'll never forget. And to have played a small role in that healing is remarkable. And it's part of the reason why I'm still a part of the team. Like I'm an in-arena host for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's not a high-profile job. It doesn't pay my bills, but it checks a lot of boxes in here, right? And it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, obviously, because of my background and where I'm from and how much I love the sport. But what the Vegas Golden Knights mean to the community is more important to me than almost what happens on the ice. We have a great team. We've been competitive. We've been in the playoffs 7 of our 8 first seasons, so that's unheard of. 2 Western Conference finals, 1 win, 1 Stanley Cup win, 2 finals appearances. It's insane. But what the team means to the community is kind of where I fit in. And I've become this face to this brand. When we won the Stanley Cup and I'm hosting the party after the parade in front of 250,000 people, and I said, we're lifting this trophy not for these players, but for this city. it's a speech that I'll never forget, right? And to have that opportunity to represent the 3 million people who call this place home, unbelievable. And then, second part of the question, starstruck, Michael J. Fox coming to the game, you know,
Yeah.
obviously up at the castle with me, cranking the siren. And what was awesome about that is I cranked the siren for him. And, listen, I wanted to be an actor because of Michael J. Fox. If you read his books, him and his dad drove from British Columbia down to Los Angeles to give it a shot. His dad said, let's go give this a shot, just like my parents did. And his story's fucking wild, pardon my French. And I love the guy. We don't know each other, but he's my idol. And having him at a hockey game, fellow Canadian, Marty McFly, like, come on,
Yeah.
the best.
That
That's
French schooling rearing its ugly head again.
Unreal. It's been a trip, dude. I hate to say stupid shit, but like if life ended tomorrow, I've led a pretty good one.
what's amazing. You got a long, long way to go. So,
Hope
but
so.
what I will say about the Knights is I have been to one game. I have family out there who lives in Summerlin. Nick and I were there a couple of years ago, and it was basically that trip. I ended up going to the Knights season opener, and that was the season where the franchise won the Stanley Cup. So again, when you look at sports, it's Bill Foley because it always starts at the top, and he had the right mindset from the get-go. And in the early years, it was GM, George McPhee. Again, my family's got a relationship with out there, so it's just you're very fortunate that you work for an unbelievable organization because they were the first league, the National Hockey League, to bring professional sports to Las Vegas. And since then, there was a second team added to the NHL, and you would figure that the first leagues that would get to 32 would have been Major League Baseball or the National Basketball Association. That wasn't the case. So the NHL is in a really healthy spot. I think you're in a really great spot. You do an amazing job. The pregame ceremony, there's a lot with the Knights that a lot of people don't realize about the entertainment aspect. But we'll have you back on. We'll eventually talk about that in time. But talk about your other hosting gigs with the Raiders for Top Rank Boxing because everything kind of is intertwined there. And you say with the Raiders, they're on Allegiant Stadium, but there is a separate lot and separate everything for them. It's not really as quite accessible as T-Mobile is to the Strip. You can walk off the Strip a little bit, and in 5 minutes you're at T-Mobile, right? So with the Raiders, it's a little different. But talk to us about how those other opportunities came about for you.
That's Vegas, right? So season one, month one. So I'm in October 8 years ago, 8 seasons ago, and I get a call from CAA Sports. And they said, hey, man, listen, Top Rank Boxing is based in Las Vegas. They came to a game. They saw you. Do you have any interest in working in boxing? I said, let's meet. So I ended up flying to Century City in Los Angeles and met with Nick Khan, who at the time was the head of CAA Sports. And he said, hey, man, we represent ESPN, Top Rank. Are you interested? And I turned it back on him. I said, you think I should be interested? And he's like, yeah, I think you should do this. So they helped broker the deal. And I was with Top Rank and ESPN for 7 years. Started as just a host. Then I, expanded to do all of their press conferences, hosted all their weigh-ins. And then when the bubble happened and the world shut down during the pandemic, boxing, pro boxing, specifically Top Rank Boxing, was the first pro sport to create a bubble. It wasn't the NBA, it wasn't hockey, it was boxing. We were the first pro sport to create a bubble here at MGM. We took over a top floor of the MGM Grand Hotel, had private access, and we took over the entire convention space, had a red camp, a blue camp, and we put on fights for 3 months during the pandemic on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So when they asked me to be the ring announcer in the bubble, I got more reps as a ring announcer in 3 months than most ring announcers get in 3 years because we were doing fights every Tuesday and every Thursday for 3 months. So we'd have 5 to 8 fights on the card twice a week because there was no content for ESPN. Like there was nothing going on. There was no pro sports. And then obviously the NBA initiated a bubble, the National Hockey League as well. So season one of the Golden Knights, Top Rank based here, saw me. I signed a deal and worked for Top Rank for 7 years. Obviously, fast forward a couple seasons, the Raiders come online. Same thing. I worked for them for 2 seasons as their in-arena guy, standing on the 50, getting the fans pumped up before kickoff. Again, iconic franchise. Just doing what I do. I was a fan with a microphone, but now I'm dressed in black and loving it, hanging out with Max Crosby and Derek Carr and what is this world, right? And that's just Vegas, and that's just work begetting work, right? Just treat people right, be good, and good things happen. And luckily, great things happened for me. I was a part of the National Hockey League directly. I hosted all of their All-Star weekends, all of the Winter Classic outdoor games. So the NHL hired me in season one to do all of their marquee events, and I did that for 5 seasons. Worked for the NFL when they were here with the draft and various things. So in a short window, I worked for a pro hockey team, the National Hockey League, a pro football team, the NFL, and then Top Rank Boxing on ESPN. And then now, out of the blue, because of my ring announcing work with Top Rank and ESPN, a spot opened up with the WWE, and I've joined single-handedly the largest entertainment company on the planet in TKO. They have UFC, Slap, WWE, PBR, Lucha. They just announced a new boxing league, and I'm so new to the WWE universe, but I got to be honest, I've never been a part of anything so remarkable in my short career.
Yeah.
This company is unbelievable. Everybody that's a part of it just understands that we're here to put on the greatest show we possibly can and step up and bring it. And to have that acknowledgement from guys like Triple H and Nick Khan, who is now part of the WWE, like you can see that full circle moment, right? Where he was with CAA and now he's the president of the WWE and working with Dana White in boxing. I'm just a kid in a candy store, right? And as you navigate life, my mindset with my wife and my family is just leave it better than the way you found it, and treat people with respect, treat people how you want to be treated, and that's the key to everything I do. And going back to the voice, I let my voice tell those stories. But for ring announcing specifically, and then I'll shut up because again I ramble. I wear all black for a purpose. Sometimes I'll put a white shirt on and a tie, but I wear all black because in my book, ring announcing is not about me, especially when I was in boxing. I had the privilege of hosting press conferences and weigh-ins and the ring announcing. So I got to learn about these warriors, these fighters who are risking their lives, stepping into this ring and literally fighting to put food on their table for their families. And so I learned quickly that I could let my voice do the work and I didn't have to be flashy in a sense, right? Like I didn't need the bright sport coats or suits. I was the Johnny Cash of the ring. I wanted it to be about that fighter and I wanted to pump him up so that I could do whatever I could do to get him to a place where he can go out there and duke it out. But because they're literally getting hit for real, like
Yeah.
they could die. And I was a kid in a candy store because it wasn't about me. And I learned that quickly. And I take that with me in all my ring announcing roles. It's not about me. It's about that superstar now, it's about that superstar that I'm pumping up and I make it there. And that's where I lead. And then, I got a bunch of directors and creatives around me who are giving me notes constantly. So I'm learning the ropes in the WWE universe, but in boxing, it was such a privilege to introduce these warriors. Really was.
So I don't want to assume, but I'm guessing WWE comes about similar to one of our past guests, our good friend, former Raw announcer, former client of Nick Khan, Adnan Virk. Nick Khan calls him up. Hey, Adnan, got this opening. What do you think? Is that how it went down for you? Nick Khan called you?
I actually got a text message from Triple H,
Okay.
and he
Wow.
just basically said, "Hey man, big fan of your work. You got time for a call?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like what are you gonna say,
Are you
right? I
ready?
looked down on my
Are you
phone.
ready?
I looked down at my phone and I was like, "What? This can't be real." And I almost like didn't pay attention to it because I thought it could have been like a political solicitation, like give me
Yeah.
50 for this you know politician. But I read the whole text and I was like, "What? All right, cool." So it worked out. My contracts were expiring with Top Rank. They were coming up to an end, and I just, it was a tough call because I will say, that Top Rank Boxing is a wonderful, incredible organization with wonderful people behind the scenes who simply took care of me. And just like the Golden Knights provided me an opportunity and gave me a platform to be seen, Top Rank groomed me in a way that has allowed me now to be a ring announcer. And, if it wasn't for Top Rank, I certainly wouldn't be with the WWE.
So there's this process that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to production. And when people go there, they have the ability to kind of change their names or, kind of formulate, names with the creative team behind the scenes. So you take, you answer Triple H, right? You take the meetings, you get the job, right? And now there's the plan for you, right? So did they approach you with the list of names, or did you have input for the name that you're presented on when you're on camera?
Yeah. So Nash was my idea. And again, I sort of let out in the conversation about how family is important to me, right? And to be honest, and this was the truth, I didn't want to change my name. I had spent, this is my 29th year in entertainment, and I kind of pushed back a little bit. I was like, let's just keep Shunock. And they're like, no, that's not the WWE way. You gotta create a name. My mother's maiden name is Nasser, and my father's last name is Shunock. And so I took the first two letters from my mother's maiden name and the two letters from my father's last name, put them together, and that's where Nash came from. So there's no connection to former wrestlers or
There's no
former
connection to
Rick
players.
Nash.
player,
No,
great player from
no,
the range.
no former athlete connection. It's strictly a family name that I was very excited that they approved because mom was happy, dad was thrilled. And again, it just shows you family first for us. And if I was going to change my name, it was definitely going to have some sort of significance or reference to who I am and who I represent and the family that I'm a part of. So that's how it came about.
So, Mark, you have your debut, Smackdown, and then I'm sure your phone was blowing up. Talk to us about that first week post your first event and just how much your social media following probably rose after that first week.
Yeah, it was a pretty whirlwind week. Not only did I have a debut, but I had a debut at the O2 Arena in London, right? So I caught the tail end of their 3 week tour through the UK. They were in Italy and Spain, and then they ended in London and then came back to the US. And when they told me, "Hey, you're going to take the final SmackDown in London," just to be able to host anything, let alone a SmackDown inside the O2 with such an iconic fan base. As I'm sure you guys know, the UK fans are something special. And first of all, nerves. It's like anything else. I still get nervous. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. Every Friday night with SmackDown, I get nervous. I walk into a Golden Knights game in a few hours, I still get nervous. But this was something special, right? And my wife came with me. Didn't really make a big stink about it until, a couple days before. I was pretty quiet about the gig. I think I announced on X that I was leaving Top Rank and joining WrestleMania, I think, or WWE just a couple days before SmackDown. And yeah, my phone blew up, and I'm 48 years old, so I grew up with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and Jimmy Superfly Snuka and Hacksaw, and that was my generation. And I was just a fan. Same thing with hockey. I was just a fan. Now you're handing me a microphone and I get to be a part of such an iconic brand, and you're entrusting me with this responsibility. It was a little overwhelming. Phone blew up, friends, family, social media blew up. I'm not that present on social, but I guess I am now. Most of the stuff I post on social has to do with the philanthropic stuff we do here in Vegas, raising money and throwing fundraisers. That's primarily my social media presence. But the wrestling universe, the WWE universe was very, very complimentary and accepting. Some folks are not going to be, and that's okay. But I'm pretty confident in what I do. I know what I bring to the table. I've been, like I said, in entertainment 29 years, and this is just the next chapter. And I'm so excited to be here and have this opportunity. And again, at the end of the day, it's about the WWE universe. And I'm just a kid in a black suit introducing superstars.
Well, let's talk about a superstar who's a huge fan of your work. The greatest of all time, John Cena, who, I mean, this guy, he's putting himself on the line for you. He's taking a shield from beer bottles being thrown at you. I would talk to us about just how fantastic it is to be able to be working with John Cena in that capacity now, where he's singling you out to really let you shine and make him shine.
But he deserves it, right? And I'm just glad to play a small part. I think the greatest thing is that the minute I open my mouth, he stands right in front of me and hoists that belt over his head. It's just something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. There's a picture in my office of me holding the Stanley Cup over my head 2 seasons ago when we won the holy grail of trophies. And to be on the ice holding the Stanley Cup over my head, game five, is something that I will have for the rest of my life. The fact that I have a ring that has my father's last name on it that I gave to him is something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. These
Awesome.
moments with John Cena in the ring are on the same level. To have the opportunity to share the ring with the legend that he is, the professional that he is, there's no words, right? Like you even said it yourself. Like, how do you even explain that? And to be 2 months into the gig, 3 months into the gig, and I'm in the ring and fans are throwing beer bottles at us. And he said, "Your announcement sucks. Read it again." And read it again with all of these lines and the never seen 17. Like, what? Come on. There's
And you know
nothing.
what? Joe, Mark nails it every single time.
Does a great job. It's amazing because, I think the learning curve for WWE television is much steeper than people think it is. Simply because of the live atmosphere. Now, Nick and I have been watching this stuff for 20 years, right? So if you grow up and, to see where it was then and to see where it was now, but I think the interesting part is recently it seems like the secondary people like the announcers and the commentators, right? And especially the ring announcers, they almost become a part of the show, right? And again, you're part of what you do is to make sure that you're so on top of your game that it doesn't become about you, it's always about them, right? So in the case of Cena, and debatable because sometimes we can't see him, but I think the fact that he gives you your shine a little bit so early on and he kind of makes you visibly seen, I really like that. And I've enjoyed so far all the Smackdown episodes. I don't think there's really been a learning curve with you. I think you went right in and you were immediately awesome.
Well, listen, thank you. As somebody, as you said, who's been watching it for 20 years, to hear that from you, that means the world, right? That means I'm doing something right. And again, you guys said it though. It's about them, it's about the brand, it's about this iconic company and living in that moment. So I think a lot of my acting background and training has come back full circle because in boxing, I didn't really need to be in that moment per se. But when you're called into the ring by John Cena, you better have your wits about you and you better know what you're about because anything can happen. And that's where my acting training and background came into play, calming those nerves, listening to your breath, but more importantly, listening to your scene partner and reacting honestly in that moment. I didn't know what he was going to say to me. He smacks me in the chest and he said, "That was terrible. Read this instead." I'm like, "Oh, okay. What am I going to say? No." Of course, he's John Cena. He's the greatest of all time, gracing Las Vegas with his presence one final time. So he's got this, he created this iconic introduction for himself. Who am I to mess it up? Just do it and do it right or get the fuck out.
There's that French again.
Get the F out.
You can beat that out, right?
Mark, so you come from a big family that instilled these amazing values, and you touched on it a couple of times, but the philanthropy, right, the charity work behind what you do, it seems like regardless of what sector of the entertainment world you're in, wherever you are, you're the biggest MO that you have is that you always want to give back, whether it's to the talents or whether it's just to regular people. So discuss some of the philanthropy and some of the charity work that you've been a part of now and through the years.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for bringing it up. It is a big part of who Cheryl and I are. It goes back to leaving it better than the way you found it, right? And I think because the entertainment industry is so challenging, that when I was given the opportunity here in Las Vegas with Rock of Ages, I felt obligated. I talked about the community here and the people here that make Vegas so special, that when I was given the opportunity to headline a show and go out there and sing these iconic 80s songs every night, that part of me had to give back to the community. And it started long before that, obviously, with my family and the upbringing that I had. My parents were incredibly giving human beings. But the minute I got to Vegas, a couple months after, we started a program called Monday's Dark. The name comes from the fact that Broadway is traditionally dark on Monday. And so on Monday night, when we didn't have a show, it was our only night off of the week, I would do a show and I would do what I do. I would get up on stage and tell jokes with a band and invite other entertainers. And in 90 minutes, we would raise 10,000 bucks for a deserving cause. Well, Monday's Dark is now 12 years old. We've thrown 230 of these parties, each charity getting 10 grand. We've raised almost $2.5 million for Las Vegas based nonprofits. And we're taking it a step further. We've embarked on a brand new community center here in Vegas where we've acquired a parcel of land just off the strip. And I'm spearheading a $50 million campaign to build a new community center with mental health and wellness at the forefront for anybody who works in hospitality, entertainment, first responders, veterans, and our public education students and educators. Everybody talks about mental health and wellness. We can't do anything in life without being healthy up top, right? You can't run an organization, you can't do your job if you're not in a great headspace. And Vegas is that. I talked about it before. We have all these incredible things, but what makes them incredible are the people. So, my mission here in Vegas, with all the jobs that I'm doing, my focus has become making sure that the people who carry Las Vegas on their backs will have a new community center to go to seek and get the help that they need. So we've partnered with some incredible organizations that work in that space, no pun intended, because the building is called The Space. Um, and we've raised millions of dollars. We're going to raise more and then just create a facility where people can go and get help when they need it. So if you're a bartender, an usher, a ticket taker, an actor, dancer, pit boss, dealer, cleaning crew, cop, firefighter, doesn't matter. You're going to have a really cool place a block off the strip to go and get help. And so that's where all my spare time and energy goes. It's to raising 50 million bucks. So you're going to hear more about that as the project comes along, but we love this city and the people here, and that's why Cheryl and I give back so much. We love it here, and we just want to take care of each other.
Well, the Space 2.0, we're looking forward to seeing that, but the current space is pretty awesome. You're sitting in a studio right now. So talk to us about the current spot you have.
Yeah, so the space is home to Monday's Dark. So on Monday nights we throw these charity events, but in between those Monday nights, we the whole mission here, because of my entertainment background, is to cultivate a local art scene and provide a venue to up and coming young artists. So if you're in a band, we've got an incredible venue, 400 capacity, state of the art lighting and sound. It's super affordable. We're open 3 to 5 nights a week with various programming, whether it's a private party or a ticketed event open to the public. The space is a true community center. It's about 9,000 square feet. It's got a podcast studio in it. Like I said, a venue that can stand 400, a little black box theater. During the day, there's all sorts of programming here, kids classes, veterans learning how to play music. I love to feature this organization. It's called Life by Music. They put Gibson guitars in the hands of veterans to teach them how to play the guitar to deal with their PTSD. Who wouldn't want to have that in their venue, right? That makes me feel so good about what we're doing here. Every time I walk in the door and I see a group of vets strumming G chords, like it's bananas. So to all the listeners, check out thespacelv.com and mondaysdark.com. All the sites are linked, but it's just this passion project that my wife and I have here. Yeah, nobody's retiring from the space. I'm on the road every week. I have a wonderful young team here that keeps it hip and current, and we're just trying to help the art scene, local music scene, and a bunch of nonprofits.
Fantastic stuff. And Mark, we appreciate all you're doing there and everything. You're very entertaining as well. Now, Joe here, my colleague, he does some public address announcing for a college nearby to us. And recently, around the time of your WWE debut, people started saying, Joe, you kind of sound like Mark when you're doing these baseball and softball walk-ups. So I'm gonna put Joe on the spot here. He's
Let's
at he
go.
is at he is at work right now, but there's no PA. So Joe, I want you to give your best, now batting or whatever you want to do, and we'll let Mark grade it out.
All right. So who am I going to introduce?
Well, I mean, what if you
Shohei
want to
Ohtani. Shohei
Shohei
Ohtani.
Ohtani? Okay, there we go.
What's Otani's number?
17.
17, right? All right. Now, what am I announcing him as a pitcher or an outfield?
You've made him nervous,
Oh
Nick.
my
Asking
gosh,
too
Joe,
many
you're
questions.
failing here.
Coming to bat. He's coming to
Coming
bat.
at
I'm
bat.
going to bat.
Bottom
Now
of the ninth inning.
batting.
Bottom of the ninth inning. He's gonna come to the plate. He got the tying runs are on base. It's a big spot. World Series.
It's important to know what position he's playing. So is it left field or right field?
He's DH.
The DH? Okay. Now batting, the designated hitter, number 17, Shohei.
Wow, Joe, you got in such a high octane that it muted you. That's how high up you got. But that was pretty good.
Hey, I think
A
there's a
little,
spot for you. There's a
that
spot for
little,
you when the athletics open up here.
There we
what do
go.
what do we
Joe, we
call
do call
that?
Joe Mr. Las Vegas. So now, in return, because Joe, he'll usually intro the podcast. So now, Mark, you're gonna give us a little you're now listening
Oh,
to
I
the
see.
You Know I'm Right podcast, and then Joe could grade that out.
You know I'm right podcast. You are now listening to.
You
All
know,
right.
yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the You Know I'm Right podcast with Nick and Joe. Sit back, relax. It doesn't get any better than this.
Fantastic.
Now we're going to use that everywhere.
I get 10%.
Mark, like that little rasp in your voice, right over, like when you feel it over here, is there like a designated name for that or no?
That developed at the Golden Knights games. I don't know where that came from because that was never a Broadway thing. That was never a stage thing. There's a moment at the start of every hockey game that I do where we do a countdown. And I'm sitting in a seat somewhere in the arena surrounded by fans, and I looked straight at the camera and I tell them, I'm like, it's Friday night in Vegas. It's about to go down. Get up on your feet and count it down with me. And then we do a 10, 9, 8.
Yeah.
And at 3, I lay out and I scream, supported live from Las Vegas. It's nighttime and the lights go out. And that's when our pregame starts. And, the Golden Knight comes out with the sword and defeats the bad guy and all hell breaks loose. But that moment was established season 1. And I've been doing it for 8 years. And that moment alone is what helped me find that little rasp. And that's what carried over into the main event introductions in boxing. And it's in pretty much every announcement that I do with the WWE.
Very nice. So, Mark, in your life or your career, what would you say has been your you know I'm right moment? What I mean by that, it's a time or place where you want to pursue something. You ask somebody for advice. They said, Mark, that's a bad idea. That's not going to work out for you. You were like, listen, I'm going to do it anyway. And in the end, you will see why it is that I'm right about this. And I can tell you, I told you so.
Oh, there's been a couple of those, but I think the most important one was when I opened the space. People thought I was nuts, and they didn't think that it would work. They thought that I would be constantly begging for funding to keep it open, and they were like, "You're not gonna be able to help that many people. There's too many things going on in Vegas. Nobody cares." And I said, hold my beer, watch, because I'm right. And now I look back on it, and Monday's Dark is 12 years old this December, and the space will be 10 years old in January. And for any business to survive that long, uh, in my opinion, is a success. I don't know how much longer I want to do it, but the people that we've been able to help and the impact that we've had on our community gives me that answer. You guys know I'm right. We helped a lot of people and we left it better than the way we found it.
That's awesome. And listen, Joe, I think with all of our Vegas entertainer-based guests, you know, Mark could put on quite the comedy show at the Space for Monday's Dark with just the I'm right past guests. So maybe we can
You
make it
have to
happen in
come.
the future.
Send them my way. Let's do it.
We have a few who are out there. And Mark, for you in particular, I think I might be flying to California at the end of May into June, right?
Then you're
So,
going to go to Vegas,
and
right?
then I
Right
got to go
after
to
that.
Vegas, and then I was being pulled to Vegas regardless. I kind of want to make some stops in California because I want to see family out there, and there's a couple different things that I want to do. But
Money in the
there are a
Bank,
couple of people who have
Chavez
requested.
Ravine.
Yeah, the Yankees play the Dodgers that weekend, so that was brought up before. You brought up Otani. I feel like I'm being called out there, but there are a couple of people out there who are former guests of ours who have kind of been inquiring, when you're coming out here and looking to set something up. A couple of entertainers, definitely a couple of comedians who I think Nick and I would really, recommend, to have in there. They're really, really good people. So, maybe I'll see you out there.
Done. Just keep me posted, brother.
Yeah.
Uh, the WWE SmackDown schedule is not hard to find. Every
Oh,
Friday we're somewhere else. I know we got Bakersfield coming up. I'm going to Riyadh at the end of June, I think. So,
And Mark's going to be in our backyard in August for the
right.
two-night SummerSlam.
yeah,
We'll see him
crazy.
then, for sure.
Crazy. Yeah, listen, it's just been, an incredible journey so far. And like I said, kid in a candy store and just blessed beyond belief to be surrounded by some of the most incredible creative people on the planet. So,
Well, Mark, we thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. This was went a little long, but it was excellent. A lot of different things about your career that we had to cover. I think we did so sufficiently and nicely. One thing I will say before the show is a lot of our guests are remote, right? Just because of the nature of doing this, they're all in different locations. But the studio space that you have out there is excellent. The video quality is great. The audio quality is great. So it seems like you have an amazing setup. Can't wait to meet you in person. Can't wait to be out there. Hopefully, it's sooner than later. And what we do here is we always give our guests the last words. So we know that there are places to find what you have going on linked off of your social channels, but where can your fans and your followers and fans of the entities that you're a part of, where can we find you? And Mark, we wish you the best of luck. Your wife, the rest of the family, and hopefully we get to do this again someday soon.
hey, listen, the space is yours when you want to do a live podcast here in Las Vegas. You need to bring your show here in front of a live audience in my venue, and we can bookend that around some cool sporting event that happens. We get it all the time. The Kelseys bought us out for their podcast during Super Bowl. We get podcasts here all the time. So come on, bring it. Just my name on social, Mark Shunock. And most of my social is referring to all of the charity events that we have going on and fundraisers. And what's remarkable is we live stream Monday's Dark on our website. We get viewers from around the world, Singapore, Brazil, all of Canada, throughout the United States. It's free to tune in and watch. I invite you to watch Monday's Dark on a Monday night, mondaysdark.com. But hit me up on social, and that's all I got.
Mark, this has been a lot of fun. We wish you the best of luck with everything moving forward here. And that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Mark Shunock, my co host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.